Welcome to the webinar Exporting Pineapples to Europe. We wait 1 more minute for other participants to join. We're quite strict on 3 o'clock at this moment. Okay, I see more and more participants are joining us now. So let's start with the introduction. Again, welcome everyone to the webinar Exporting Pineapples to Europe, organized by CBI. My name is Thomas Vonk, and I'm working for CBI in the Market Intelligence Department. So in my role as Program Manager Market Intelligence, I'm responsible for the market information within the sector fresh fruit and vegetables. We'll start with some of the house rules or notices. And we cannot see or hear you. And on the right of your screen, there's a menu, and in the menu there's a questions tab, and you can ask all your questions in written in the question tab. And we have, you will see that on the agenda later. We have 3 moments for that we are going to answer your questions. And like the easy questions will be answered written right away. So yeah, again, do not forget to just type your questions, and we'll come back to that in one of our question rounds. Okay, there's a recording of this session, and the recording will be published on our CBI YouTube channel, and also for the people who speak better French than English. In the YouTube CBI YouTube channel, there's a possibility to have a translation to French. We will send you the information for that when you are registered here. You'll get an email from us with the link to the recording and also on how to get the translation into French. Okay, at the end we have some questions for you. Please complete it. It's about how you have experienced this webinar. And if you have audio problems, please try phone call. So today for the pineapple webinar, we have 2 presenters. They will introduce themselves in detail when they start their own part of the presentation. But we have Michel Peperkamp, who has worked as a researcher and export consultant in the fresh sector for a long time, and he's also been for already 8 years a researcher for CBI in the fresh fruit and vegetable sector. And then our guest speaker for today is Thierry Paqui, and he has worked with many exporters in West Africa and is an expert on the pineapple trade. So he will tell us more about quality controls of African, Caribbean and Pacific crops, and especially on the pineapple business. Okay, the agenda for today. I'm already starting with my introduction. So it's a brief introduction of CBI as well. That will follow. And then Michel will start with his first part of the presentation on the European demand and trends. Then we have a short question round, about 5 minutes. So again, do ask your questions in the question tab on the right of your screen in written. Then Thierry will talk about pineapples from West African perspective. Another question round for the part of Thierry. And then Michel will talk again about entering the European pineapple market. and we close with more questions and answers. We cannot promise we will answer all your questions, but hopefully we have time to answer most of your questions. CBI is a center for the promotion of imports from developing countries, and we are part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, and we are funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. Our mission is to support the transition towards inclusive and sustainable economies. We strengthen the social, economic, and environmental sustainability of small, medium enterprises in developing countries by connecting them to European and regional markets. And with that work, we promote and create decent jobs, and we pay special attention to women and youth. And we also stimulate sustainable production and trade. And with that work, we contribute to the 4 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So decent work and economic growth, gender equality, responsible consumption and production, and partnership for the goals. So at this moment, we can start new projects and are active in 24 new countries. As you can see, nowadays we're mostly in Africa and a bit in Asia. And like 10 years ago, we were quite active in South America as well. But nowadays, in our Ministry of Foreign Affairs decides that we are active mostly in Africa. We are active in 14 sectors. These are the 14 sectors, and today, of course, is all about fresh fruit and vegetables, which are pineapples part of. The 2 main pillars of CBI is the CBI projects. So that are export coaching programs in the countries where we have projects. And so that's usually it's our 4-year expert coaching programs where we have different stages of getting them to a good quality, of learning them about the market, and also getting to European fairs so they can exhibit their products and find buyers. And in the projects, we work with governments and sector organizations, of course, with the producers and the business service organizations. We work with the NGOs, and in the Netherlands and Europe, we work with importers and international buyers. So we have all kinds of partners in such projects. The second very important pillar is our market information. We make market information available for SMEs in developing countries. It's all free, our market information. It's on our website, so it's easily accessible. And the studies answers questions such as which countries offer the most opportunities for a product or a service, what channels should you use to enter the market in your sector, and what laws and requirements must you follow. So please visit our website, cbi.eu/market-information. If we have time left at the end, I can go and let you see our websites, what you can find on our website, but please visit it yourself. And now I will go to Michel. We'll make Michel the presenter, and he will start his presentation. Yes.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, I can hear you, so go ahead.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Michel Peperkamp. I have the honor today to tell you a little bit more about the market for pineapples in Europe. So that's what I'm going to do. So first of all, just to give you a slight introduction of myself, I've been working in market intelligence and export development for 14 years, and in the past 8 years, like Thomas said, I have been working with market intelligence for CBI in the fresh fruit and vegetable sector. So I facilitate businesses from outside of Europe to get into the European market. And today we're going to talk a bit about the pineapple market. What I want to talk about, what I want to talk about today is how the market is developing, which countries offer most opportunities, the trends that play a role in this, but also focus a little bit more on the West African supply and how it fits in with the current European trade. So what are the main opportunities, but also what are the main challenges and how to become a successful supplier to the European market. So first of all, I'd like to tell you a bit more about the market demand for pineapples in Europe and how it develops. Starting with some general remarks. Basically, the market for pineapples is a mature market. There are a lot of large multinationals that are active in this market. And you also have to realize that even though it's a large fruit, or it has a large demand, it's also a fruit that is considered to be a bit difficult to prepare from the consumer perspective. That having said, it's like I said, it's a big market, so there's also a demand about all year round, maybe a bit more throughout these special holidays, but you can see a demand that goes all year. And basically Europe, all European markets, they depend on import. So our climate is not tropical enough to produce a lot of pineapples. So we really depend on the import for our consumption of pineapples. And being a big market, a big category, it also means that there is room for diversification. So you can think about different varieties, but also about freshly processed and other things. But I will go into that a little bit later in our presentation. So looking at the European trade, you can see that there's not much growth, or there's even a slight decline in the past few years. But it's the European market is a 1 billion euro market, so it's a huge market. 2020, 2021 have been a little bit more difficult. Of course, when we started with the COVID pandemic, a lot of restaurants closed or had to close. So there was a big channel that was not able to purchase any more pineapples. And of course, the logistics have become a bit more difficult in recent times. So that was not very favorable, not for pineapple, but not for any fruit or vegetable coming from outside Europe. But I don't think that's the main reason why we see a small decline in 2020-21. There's also been less production and less trade because there was a lower profitability. So less money that made suppliers decide to grow other crops or focus on other products. So there are several reasons why you can see fluctuations in this market, but generally it's a relative stable market. It's a big market. I think you have to focus on a multiple year perspective and you know, you can profit from the years that are good. You take your maybe small losses in the years that it's less favorable, but you need to be in this trade for the long term if you want to make it. Go to the next slide. So if you look at the supply, then we can see that 80% has its origin in developing countries, and we talk about the total trade, so including the European trade between countries, the re-exported pineapples. So 80% is developing countries, and from that 80%, only a small percentage at this moment comes from Africa, mainly Western Africa. So there's a lot of there's a big gap to fill, I think. Looking at opportunities, different markets in Europe. Let's start with developing countries, or the supply from developing countries. Then we can see that it's mainly dominant in Western Europe. So the Western Europe almost imports all the pineapples coming from developing countries, with the Netherlands coming on top with 119 million euros. And Belgium is quite large as well. It's just below the Netherlands with 94 million. But these countries, you have to consider them also as transit countries. So a lot of pineapples go by boat, enter the ports in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and from there they are re-exported to other countries, France, Germany. So that's why there's a relatively large number in these smaller countries. Looking at the big consumer countries, then you can see France, Italy, Spain, Germany. Those are the big consumer countries. But we talk about developing countries, but that includes, of course, the main supplier, Costa Rica. So if you really focus on the African supply, then we have another, well, we can have another look at the market and see what happens. So if you look at the supply from Africa of pineapples, then France is really the main importing country for pineapples. It's the main destination at this moment. Belgium as well, but that again, it's a logistical country for France. So France is really a focused country. If you look at the other countries, like I said, Belgium and the Netherlands are trade hubs. Like for example, in Belgium, 80% of the pineapples are re-exported to Germany, France, and the Netherlands. If you look at the big consumer countries, for example, Germany has the largest population in Europe compared to all the other countries. It has the good demand for organic as well, and it still has growth potential. It's not the biggest consumer, but it is the biggest country with the highest population. Looking at other countries, for example, Spain, you can see a high number of pineapples coming by air. There's definitely a rising import also from Africa, although it's a bit more a seasonal market. Spain is, of course, also a big producer of its own fruit and vegetables, so that might compete sometimes with the supply from other countries. So these are the main markets, I would say. They have each their own characteristics. So that's something really to take into account. I think there should be more potential in other markets than France for African suppliers, but it's still in development. If you talk about big markets, markets such as a country like France, a big consumer market, it also offers segmentation, or at least the potential to diversify your products. So you can think about air freight, you can think about other varieties, and all these different segments, they can be an opportunity for a supplier. If you talk about other markets like the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, then you will see, for example, a lot of quite a large share of freshly cut pineapple. And if you focus a bit more on Germany, then you will see the organic market will be a bit bigger than other markets. So again, there are differences between countries, but this is I think how you can maximize your profit by focusing on the right niche. So going into a little bit more into the trends of the market, starting with health. Health is one of the biggest trends in Europe if you talk about the food sector, and also the share of organic pineapples it's still niche, it's still quite small, but it is growing. So these numbers that you can see here, these are retail sales numbers of organic food. And here you can see that actually Germany and France are the biggest countries in organic retail sales. It increased with 15% from 2019 to 2020. And it's reached a total value of 52 billion euros. And then we talk about all organic food, not just pineapples. If you think about pineapples, then I think the market share would not be much more than 3, maybe 4% on average, which is already quite high, I think. But with a 15% growth, it's an interesting niche if you can specialize your company in organic produce. Then branding, it's a big segment. So branding is quite important for pineapples. And you can see companies doing that by promoting, for example, a specific quality, a specific origin, and making their supply chain more transparent. So there are examples, for example, to promote your origin with a PGI, which is a protected geographic indication. And that's actually what Benin, the country Benin, did with their sugar loaf. They put a special label on it that this pineapple is typically from their origin, trying to differentiate from other pineapples in the market. But you can also do it with other things. You can do it with exclusive packaging, like you see here with the brand Exotica. You can add labels to your pineapples. You see on the big picture, you see a label with a QR code. Then as a consumer, you can actually find more information on this particular pineapple. And you can see it states, visit my farm. So as a consumer, you can really see where your pineapple is coming from. And that's a way to differentiate in the highly competitive market. So that's branding, but of course there's another big trend going on in the whole sector of fresh fruit and vegetables, which is sustainability. And if you look at pineapples, you can see several examples of sustainability being promoted, getting more attention from both consumers and retailers. You can see, for example, the carbon neutral pineapple, which means that all carbon, the whole carbon footprint has been compensated somehow. You can see, for example, more about true cost accounting, which is one of the companies here on the right picture, which is Iosta, is really focusing on getting all the costs of pineapple production on the map, and not just financially, but also the impact that it has on the environment, the water that is used. So they basically calculate the true value of a pineapple and trying to sell that story in the European market. So they get a higher price for the pineapples because they want to do it sustainably. And other things like waste. Waste is really something that is getting more and more focus. Plastic is a no-go in the fresh foods vegetable markets. Although there's of course a contradiction. That's a contradiction with another trendy item, and that's convenience. So in convenience, you will actually see a lot of plastic, even though they're trying to reduce it. But it's so crucial for pineapple to be successful in the market, to make it convenient to the consumer. Because like I said, consumers, they consider pineapples to be quite a difficult fruit to peel, to eat. So they want to make it easy. And these freshly cut pineapples, that also can happen in the origin country. For example, the company Blue Skies has a facility in Ghana, and they freshly process, freshly cut the fruit locally before shipping it to Europe. So it can be pre-packed, but you can also see more and more in-store processing options, like the machine you see here below. That can actually be in a supermarket for consumers to have their pineapples peeled, cut in any form that they would like them to be. So making pineapples more accessible, more convenient for the consumer in Europe is actually contributing to the future success of pineapples. So this was a quick catching up on the market demands and some of the trends. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Michel. I'm just looking at the questions, and for all those who joined in a bit later, I'll tell again that please, if you have questions, ask them via the questions tab in the menu on the right of your screen, and then we can answer your questions. So far there are no questions, but maybe I have a question already. I'm not sure if you or Thierry can best answer this, but which African countries are at this moment the most exporting to Europe? And maybe another question: which African countries have the best growth potential for exporting pineapples?
The first question, I would spoil my presentation later on if I answer that right now.
I'm sorry.
But we will get to there. And then maybe we can talk later a little bit more about the potential maybe of other African markets and include Thierry in the discussion.
That would be great. Then we go to the next part, that will be Thierry. And again, I'll tell to our audience, please ask your questions. I will now go to Thierry. Thierry, I will make you a presenter.
Do you see my screen?
And we can see your screen and I can hear you. So go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you very much, Michel. Just a quick word about myself. I'm an independent consultant, and I've been following the pineapple trade for quite some years now. For those of you who are familiar with the magazine Friedrop, I write a monthly note on the pineapple market, on the European pineapple market, and I've been writing this monthly note since more than a decade now. And I also do, like Thomas mentioned at the beginning, I also do quality controls of various crops for importers, among which pineapples. So today my presentation will be about what buyers expect from exporters when sending pineapples to the European market. And to do so, I'll have my presentation will take place in will have 4 steps. First of all, I'll talk about importers' expectations. Then I'll show you pictures of do's and don'ts taken from quality controls. And then I'll talk about African origins, how they can compete against Latin America. And I'll conclude by presenting a brief success story. So buyers' expectations, it's always about what are buyers' expectations when they're importing your pineapples. It's always about quality. The main aspect, the main thing you must keep in mind is that it's always about quality, standardized quality, harmonized quality. It's always about quality. Quality is like a mantra. What you need to know is that your competitors, mainly those from Latin America, are very professional in terms of having a standardized quality, a harmonized quality. And this is due to the fact that they closely follow crop growing protocols, which tends not to be necessarily the case when you're looking at companies or young people exporting from Africa. There's always this difficulty in following closely crop growing protocols. There's also what a buyer or an importer is expecting is for you to have an attractive and resistant packaging. And when I mean resistant packaging, you need to have to devote enough money. I know that right now, with the cost of the lack of boxes, the lack of raw material to have boxes, people tend to because boxes cost a lot right now. They've always cost a lot in terms of export. People tend to want to gain money by not putting much money into investing much money into the boxes, and that's a mistake. And you also need to have well-built pallets, and I'll show you why. So again, poor or inadequate packaging has to do with the fact that because you want to save money on your costs, you imagine that, okay, you'll go for the lesser quality boxes, and in the end, you finish by losing money when you export, because weak boxes mean an increased risk of damaging your fruits, an increased risk of losing your fruits at the bottom of the pallet, because the pallets, the fruits at the bottom of the pallet tend to be squashed. And once they are squashed, it's difficult for the importer to sell them, and somebody has to pay. Please keep in mind that the importer will not lose money. It will always be at your expense if the boxes at the bottom of your pallet are damaged. Another common mistake also is the mixed color. I mean, once your buyer once you set specifications with your buyer in terms of color, sizes, you need to be consistent. You need to be sure that you work closely to to respect those specifications. There's also a challenge in most African countries not being able to prepare exports from pack houses. And it's not a need to do, but it helps because you need to be able to wash your fruits. You need to be able to clean the fruits. You need to be able to keep them, to weigh them in an adequate manner that you can sort them and have the right size fruits in the same boxes. And then not being able, like I said, to respect your commitments or your specifications. Now, I'll mention this later on again, but you need to keep in mind that freight costs have become increasingly high and weigh on the prices of the pineapples. So if you have, for instance, a commitment with your buyer about a certain volume that you're supposed to supply, and you know that you have some quality defects, better for you to inform him that you won't be able to respect the volumes on which you agreed, and rather than to send them, because with the freight cost right now, the market is very selective in terms of pineapples. So it's very difficult to market pineapples that are not of good quality. Like I mentioned earlier, this is an example of weak boxes. As you can see, the boxes at the bottom of the pallet are seriously damaged, which concludes that the fruits at the bottom of the pallets will not be of good marketing quality. Your importer will not take the chance to supply his customers with boxes that are squashed or with fruits that are squashed or damaged. So you need to be very careful about the quality of the boxes in which you put your fruit. There's a common saying about importers when they look at the boxes, they tend to think if you cared for your fruit, you would care for the boxes in which you put them. So here I have an example of boxes and pallets. On the two pictures on the left, you see these are rather strong boxes, well-built pallets with corner angles and straps. These two pictures are from Ghana. These are exports from Ghana. And here you can see an export from Cuba. So you see that some exporters manage to really take care of their exports, putting them in really good-looking, attractive boxes, which allows also, which plays into the final price that you can achieve when you're marketing those fruits, when the importer is marketing those fruits. So there's a picture of Sugarloaf. I put this picture because Sugarloaf, this variety has been gaining some interesting market shares on the European air freight market. And most of all, you need to keep in mind that there are two types of Sugarloaf being sold on the market: the green ones, like the ones on the bottom of the picture here, and the colored ones. All depends on the specifications of your importer. If your importer wants you to supply him with colored fruits, it's because he has outlets for those fruits. On the other hand, if he wants green fruits, it's because his clients want green fruits. So you need to be closely listening and following the specifications of your importers in terms of what he expects from you. Here is a picture, for instance, of what you see when you're doing quality controls. On one side, you can see that the color of the fruits is homogeneous, it's not mixed, while on the other side, fruit color is really mixed, dull. You don't know if it's really colored green, it's in between. And when your buyer, your importer asks for colored fruits, sending him fruits of the second picture is really not going to cut it. Here is another example as well of mixed fruits in the same box. On one side, you can see that the color of the fruit is homogeneous, not mixed, while on the other side, in the same box, you have greenish, colorless fruits, while you have also a colored fruit, all mixed in the same box. This is a lack of consistency. This is a lack of good work done at the pack house in terms of sorting out the fruits that can be put in the box. And this also affects the outlet, the marketing of your fruits. So you need to really be consistent in the choices, in the way you pack your fruits. Main quality defects often observed when we do the quality controls. The main one that comes into play is the external bruising. Now, when I do trainings in pack houses, in exporting country pack houses, what I tend to tell people boxing pineapples is that if you drop the fruit, please keep it aside. Do not put it back into the box. If you're handling the fruit and the fruit falls, you do not see the defects or the shock, the traces of the shock. But once you put it back in the box, 2 days, 3 days later, when we are doing the quality controls in Europe, and we see this, I mean, if you see these bruisings, these traces of bruises on the fruit outside, then you know that the work at the pack house wasn't done properly, and these fruits are taken out of the box. So instead of having 6 fruits in the box, you're having 4 fruits in the box, and this is a loss for the importer that's supposed to supply his client with a certain number of fruits and a weight in the box, of course. Another case of main defects that you can see, it's overripeness, fruit translucency. Another case as well. So this is really damageable because you're supposed to be able to keep a bit the fruit on shelf. So when we're doing quality controls and have these defects and signal it in our reports, the consequence is a rejection most of the time by the importer who rejects the lot, and you're losing money because you won't be paid for the lot that you sent. Another case also that you can see during quality controls is internal browning, as you can see here. You also have cases of soft rot. And of course, this is another one which is a bit shocking, but you need to keep this in mind. Your boxes need to be free from pests. So I'm not saying that we always have snakes in boxes. This is a really rare case, 1 in a million, if I should say. But in most cases, when we do quality controls, or when I do quality controls, I run into spiders, which have nothing to do in a box. I run into lizards. Worst case scenario is a snake, which has really nothing to do in a box. So in a pineapple box, when people tend to tell you, be careful where you store your boxes, be careful how you manage your pineapples before exports. This is all part of what we consider as the overall quality that should be given to the fruits, to the care of the fruits. How can West African origins compete against Latin American ones? First of all, I would like to say that this part mainly has to do with air freight, because when you look at the general pineapple, the European pineapple market, imports are about 1 million tons per year, and on that million ton, 99% is sea freight, and of those 99% sea freight, 100% is extra sweet. And this variety, because it is very resistant to transport, to sea transport, it has less skin defects. The skin is stronger, and most of all, because the fruit is very sweet, extra sweet has taken over the trend. So when I'm talking about how West African origins can compete, I'm mostly talking about the air freight market, because on the air freight market, and I think Michel will talk about the varieties later on the air freight market, you have all the 4 varieties that are available for the trade, mainly Smooth Cayenne, Sugarloaf, Victoria, and Extra Sweet on the air freight market. But it's all about harmonizing quality. It's all about following closely crop protocols. And an advantage that African origins have against compared to Latin American ones is the closer distance to Europe. Because of this closer distance, they have reduced air freight costs. Now you need to keep in mind that because air freight costs, with war in Ukraine and with different factors, the high cost of oil, air freight costs have increased in such a manner that importers are now having to pass on that freight cost to the cost of pineapples. So if you're sending pineapples of poor quality, they won't be able to sustain the price on which they're supposed to be sold for the importer and you to make money. So you really need to be careful about the quality and see how you can only put on board, ship only good and harmonized quality fruits. Now, I also mentioned these 2 lines here, Sugarloaf and Baron de Rothschild. Sugarloaf, because Sugarloaf has taken on the air freight market from Africa, Sugarloaf has taken over a good part of Smooth Cayenne's market shares. And Sugarloaf is available in several countries. I mean, you have them in Benin, you have them in Ghana. So you have them in Togo. So there are a lot of countries growing sugarloaf, and there's a good demand on the air freight market for sugarloaf. Also keep in mind that there are two markets that tend to be looking for air freight pineapples in Europe. France is number one, Belgium is another one, and you can also add Spain, like Michel mentioned earlier. And this last variety here, it's Baronne de Rothschild. It's an indigenous variety grown in Guinea. For the time being, the developing, the variety already existed. It's very similar to Smooth Cayenne. In fact, it's both varieties are very similar. The difference between Smooth Cayenne and Baronne de Rothschild is that while Smooth Cayenne has an acidity taste, Baronne de Rothschild lacks that acidity taste. It's very close to sugar, high sugar content like sugarloaf, and which makes it another opportunity, a gaining variety that could have opportunities on the European markets. Now, for the time being, Guinea is only supplying regional markets. They're sending their Baronne de Rothschild to Senegal, targeting Morocco. But by next year, they plan on starting with small exports to Europe. One last point for this, Baronne de Rothschild, unlike the other varieties, is a seasonal fruit, is a seasonal variety. It's only available in Guinea at least, from November to April. So this variety will only be targeting a niche market, and you need to consider that niche markets, air freight market, niche markets have a higher value added to these products. I'll finish then by presenting this success story. The brand is Burkia. So it's all about quality and branding. Michel mentioned earlier branding. It's all about branding. But to brand something, you need to have a consistent quality. And this consistent quality has been achieved through training and harmonized practices. So this brand started exporting a Smooth Cayenne from Cameroon, and moved on to exporting Smooth Cayenne from Benin. So on a market where Smooth Cayenne tends to lose market shares, to be able to consistently sell Smooth Cayenne at an improved sales price, and by putting in the same box fruits from Cameroon and from Benin, is for me a success story. So this is how I'm going to conclude my presentation and give back the floor to Michel and Thomas. Sorry for the lengthy time that I took to explain all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thierry. This was very good information. There are questions. I think I also missed some questions in the last part of the presentation of Michel. So we'll start with that. Michel, you talked about the organic trend, and there's a question. It says it's not easy to grow pineapple organically. Is there a recommendation for a good guide or a link for organic production?
I'm not an expert in the organic production of pineapples. I know it's a very small percentage today that is being grown organically, and as any other tropical fruit, I completely agree. It is not easy at all. But you can see that also with the, for example, the market leader, Costa Rica, only a very small percentage does organic. But I think if you want to do organic, it probably greatly helps if you're not a massive supplier. If you're a smaller supplier, you can dedicate more time to your field, handle it in a better way. That I think that greatly improves your chances of growing organically. Doing this on a massive scale, it's always difficult, or maybe even impossible. So I would focus on smaller lots. and give it a try. But if if you cannot do it, then I would recommend not to do it, because it will be a higher cost, and you have to see if you can make those costs back. I saw another question about the added value of organic, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Michel. I will send the link to the market entry report as well to one who asked the questions, or to all of you, because there's some information about organic certification which can maybe help you further.
I think Thierry wants to add a
Yes, I just
thing.
wanted to make a small contribution, which is that, like Michel said, organically grown pineapples are really difficult to manage, but there are growing crop protocols developed for these crops. That's one. You need to have the certification, like Thomas said. That's true. The certification does a lot with this. And when you look at, for instance, sugarloaf, green sugarloaf, they're grown without the use of ethophon that degreens the pineapples. So in most cases, you can have an organically grown set of crops like that. But it also has to do with you need to be careful with the chemicals that you use when growing the pineapples. So it's a whole context in terms of growing those pineapples. That was just a small contribution that I wanted to put.
Okay, thank you, Thierry. Yeah, there's another question about the organic. How much of the added costs of maintaining the source tracing and organically farmed pineapples are compensated by the market price? So, well, what's the extra price?
In theory, it would be compensated, of course, with a higher price on the market. And in a normal market, it would be. But you have to understand that if the market is not really good, not even for conventional pineapples, and the price is going down, the prices overall are going down, then it's really hard to defend such a high price for organic. So it really depends also on the market circumstances. But like I said earlier in the presentation, you need to be in this trade with a long-term vision. So maybe you lose this month, you lose the next month, but the 5 months after that, you make a profit. That's how you have to think as a supplier, I think. Thierry.
I'll just complete what you said, is that just to give you a rough idea, up to 3 years ago, market prices for pineapples were roughly around between 1.90 to 2 euros per kilo on the wholesale market when importing those pineapples. And it was really a challenge to sell above those prices when you needed to sell organic, because it was deemed too expensive. With the high cost of freight rates, with the fact that the sweet market is developing by air, we've reached now prices of above 3 euro per kilo. So what seemed almost impossible back then now becomes a possibility. But again, it's all about quality. If you're telling somebody that you're going to sell, for instance, organic pineapples to Germany, if the quality isn't there, if it's not consistent, nobody's going to buy your pineapple just because you brand it as organic. So it's all about quality again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You talked about, Michel, you talked about pineapples from South America, mainly Costa Rica, and from Africa. And there's a question, what are the prospects for Indian pineapples in Europe, or just maybe from Asia in general? But the question is for Indian, but maybe you can stretch it to Asia.
Yeah. In general, I would say if the quality is good, if it's a good product, there's always an opportunity. But I also know that India is a supplier of many things, and that's probably one of the mistakes I see with suppliers from India. They offer not only 1 or 2, but they offer 10, 15 different products. For an importer, it's really difficult to understand your expertise if you do so many different products. So if you specialize in pineapples coming from India and you have a good product and you can present it well, I think you definitely have an opportunity. But make sure that you present yourself as a pineapple specialist and not a supplier that has pineapples and 15, 20 other products. So that's the key message I think I would give to suppliers in India. Besides that, I think India does not yet have a reputation or a big reputation in pineapple. So that's another challenge. That's another thing you have to work on. You have to work on the reputation of the country in supplying pineapples. So yeah, those two things take into consideration.
Okay, thank you. One more question, and then I think we have to go on with the second part of Michel's presentation. There's a question about diversification. It says diversification has been mentioned. I assume this also includes processing. What are good sourcing links for a processed pineapple? For example, canned pineapple or pineapple juice concentrate. What are the good sourcing links?
I think that's an excellent question for you, Thomas. I would refer them to the website of CBI because there's a whole section on processed fruits and vegetables. So we talk about fresh in this presentation, freshly cut as well, of course. And there's definitely a market for other processed kind of pineapples, like canned pineapples or pineapple juice, concentrates. So yeah, it's a whole different market, but I think it could be interesting for a producer to be able to offer different pineapple products if you really specialize in pineapples, because you can divide your risks as a business as well. So I would say yes, but please have a look at the website for processed foods.
That's true, Michel. So today we are mostly talking about fresh, and also CBI has market information on processed fruit and vegetables. And so check our website on processed fruits and vegetables. You'll find more information on there as well. And I think in the near future we'll also make a special study on dried pineapple as well.
Excellent.
Okay, let's go to your presentation again, Michel. And then we'll try to have one more question round, so we'll try to answer the other questions at the end.
Yeah.
I'll make you a presenter.
Yes, please. Okay. You should be able to see my screen in a minute.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so let's continue with competition in the markets and where West Africa fits in. So, like I said, Costa Rica, of course, is the main supplier to the European market. They dominate this market with 84% at the moment. And that's mainly because it's, like Thierry said, it's such a standardized country. It's almost all the MD2 variety that they supply. They're big, huge companies like Del Monte. So it's a huge business, but really standardized. And that's probably the biggest difference, I would say, with a lot of supply from other countries. But it's also the reason why they are market leader. The disadvantage, I would say, for Costa Rica is that, like I said, their market share on organic is really small because they're really focused on mass production of a standardized product. So there's maybe a little differentiation, even though it's the main supplier. But it's also being a big supplier, or being the biggest supplier with 84%. You're always under the scope. So people are always looking to Costa Rica, what is going on. If there's any issue with sustainability or any negative news, it will come out because, well, they're the biggest supplier. So it's also difficult for Costa Rica because everybody's looking to them. And I think it's a small country, so if something goes wrong, maybe in climate and something else, they cannot spread any risks. They cannot supply their pineapples from a completely other region because it's all in one small country. So it's very concentrated. So yes, Costa Rica is definitely the most dominant supplier, and they probably will remain the most dominant supplier for in the years to come. But that doesn't mean that you can take a gap out of the market share. And I think a good start, like Thierry said, it's making sure your quality is right. So if you look at how the competition is evolving, I've taken out Costa Rica in this graph because they're up in the charts. You wouldn't see the other countries anymore. But if you look at other countries, of course, there's another country, Ecuador, also in Latin America, that is the second largest supplier. But after that, it's Western Africa, and mainly Ivory Coast and Ghana. There's a big French company doing business in Ivory Coast, so they really push up the numbers over there. But also in Ghana, for example, with the company Blue Skies, like I mentioned, these are the countries that do most pineapples to Europe from Western Africa. An interesting development you can see in Kenya in 2020-21. There's all of a sudden there's a growing export in pineapples. And I know that the company Del Monte, which is of course a market leader from Costa Rica, they invested in Kenya in air freighted pineapples in Kenya. So this proves it is possible. But just like Thierry said, you really have to focus on the right quality, and then to take it a step further. Try to focus on things that make you different from the supply from Costa Rica. And I saw in one of the questions that it's not easy to compete in price. So yeah, if you have the same product but the price is higher than from Costa Rica, of course it will be impossible to sell your pineapples. So you really have to look beyond that, or you have to try to be as competitive in price, or look for other ways to set your product apart, which can be varieties, which can be labeling, anything like we mentioned before. So a big part of the market is basically in the hands of big companies, big integrated companies. Those are the ones that dominate the market. Some of them even have their own shipping lines. So of course they're more cost efficient. And of course it makes sense. But as a supplier, I think you really have to focus on your own success story. But it also means that you have to work together, very closely together with production, with packing, with exports, and try to integrate your supply chain as well. So when you are working with partners in Europe, it's not just a client this year and maybe in 5 years again. you have to look for a stable supply, you have to look for a stable partner, but really work together with them, like an integrated supply chain. That's probably the only way to really compete with these huge companies that are integrated basically from production up to the destination market. So what does it take then to really enter the market successfully? To begin with, it's a product that is really dominated by the retail, by supermarkets in Europe. And retail access, it's all about a consistent quality, but not just that, but also having a competitive price. And that's most of this market. It's based on consistent supply, competitive price, and long-term planning. So if you cannot join that game, try to find your own niche. So you can optimize the quality and your performance, or you can really focus on your own niche market. Basically, in any business, in any niche or mass market, really focus on a few things that are crucial for the European market. Maybe in addition to what Thierry already told, your pineapples has to be free from disease, free from pesticides. Organic, it's of course even stricter. There are specific residue levels that are allowed for different pesticides on pineapples. For example, for ethylene, for degreening, for example, it's 2 milligrams per kilo. But you cannot use this for organic production. So you have to find something else, or you have to manually select your pineapples instead of using degreening. And then of course, we have certifications. And to supply the market, Global GAP is the minimum standard that you need to supply the European market. But in addition, a lot of buyers, in particular the supermarket buyers, so the main channel basically for pineapples, they require much more than that. They require food safety. They require a social or sustainable certification like SMETA. SMETA has become a very common standard for all fruits and vegetables that are sold through supermarket channels. But also look more into the future. You can see Rainforest Alliance, for example, becoming a more dominant certification as well. If water is an issue, then you have Global GAP Spring. So all these standards and certifications, these you have to use to prove yourself as being a good quality supplier with a sustainable product, with social compliance. It's basically becoming a standard which you really have to live up to. And this is linked to the quality requirements. There's a standard, a marketing standard for pineapples. I think it's always good to have a quick look and see, what is the minimum standard for pineapples. And remember that in Europe, class 1 is probably the minimum that you should get to sell your pineapples. And then like Thierry said, it's all sweet. It's all about sweetness, and that's sometimes it's a difficult one because the supermarkets, they want to have a product that can be on the shelf sufficient time. So they need shelf life, but then supplying a pineapple that is not sufficiently ripened or not sweet enough, then the consumer will buy it once, but they will not come back for a second time. So basically the Brix content, so the sweetness of the pineapple, it has to be exactly right for the supermarket to put it on the shelf, sufficient time to sell, and a sufficient sweetness for the consumer that they will actually come back and continue buying pineapples. This is really crucial for successful pineapple trade. And of course, packaging. Thierry already told you a little bit about it, but also use standard boxes, 12 kilo gross weight. Usually Europe, they would requires the sizes 6 to 8. Maybe probably 7, 8 and more in supermarkets, but 6 to 8 is the general requirement for sizes, I would say. And then my last tips, for any supplier, I would really look at your, what you can offer. So ask yourself, what are you really good at? Because, for example, you can adopt the MD2 pineapple like Costa Rica. You can start producing MD2 pineapples and get the license and produce. But it is a costlier pineapple to produce. It takes much more investment. So is that within your budget? Is that something that you can really differentiate in? And of course, the route to your markets. Of course, Western Africa is closer to the European market, but it depends where you are exactly. But because sometimes the total route is even longer than from Costa Rica in time, at least, and that makes you less competitive. So those are all aspects that you really have to look into. And when you know what your strengths are as a company, then you can select the right variety. You can decide focusing on the bulk market or more niche markets. If it's more like a niche product, then there will be more possibilities to ship by air. But for each niche, there's a different type of buyer. So all these things, you have to make the right choices for your company. Something that everybody has to think about is of course quality, and never compromise on quality. Doesn't matter if you're on the bulk market or a niche market. Always be on top of your game and on top of the quality. And then adding value, like I said, it can be anything, but in the end, you have to convince your buyer that your pineapple has an added value, which can be branding in quality. It can be maybe a residue-free pineapple, an authentic story behind the pineapple, where it comes from, who's producing it. It can be processed, of course, like we talked about, organic or even fair trade label. Those choices you have to make for yourself, but I would definitely try to do that together with a European buyer, because that makes it a lot easier. So that's, for my part, my presentation. I would advise you to go to the website of CBI. I think the studies were recently published. You can find them on the link, but you can also find a lot of other links about how to find buyers, more general information about buyer requirements, and all kinds of other things on fresh fruit and vegetables. So that's for my part. Good luck, and hopefully we have a few more questions we can ask or we can answer.
Thank you, Michel. Yeah, we have still quite a lot of questions. So let's just make a start and see how far we can come. There's still a question. Oh yeah, considering the fact that pineapples are perishable produce, how does the exporter work within the limited time of preserving this fruit, or call it the lifespan, and time required for it to arrive to the European market from Africa?
Yeah, that's what I just said. I think you have to really know your logistics, because you can see the transfer time from port to port, from Ivory Coast to the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. You can calculate the time, but then I think you also have to calculate the time that it takes you to get your product from the fields to the pack house, from the pack house to the port, because it all adds up. So you have to really look for the most efficient way to ship your products. And then there are a couple of technical ways to preserve your products while shipping it. Of course, the cold chain is most important. Keep the product on the right temperature while being in transit. There's a cargo handbook you can consult for a lot of different fruits and vegetables about the ideal temperature. So I would recommend that. But maybe Thierry has some advice on.
Yeah, just want to complete what you said, which is to give a rough idea. Transit time from Costa Rica or from Côte d'Ivoire when you're moving up through Ghana to Europe, because the ship docks, for instance, in Ghana, in Senegal, there's no direct route, there's no direct shipping line, because they always have to take in and drop cargo. It's 2 weeks time. It's 2 weeks time, so you need to keep in mind that roughly you're talking about 2 weeks time, 2 weeks transit time from departure to arrival in Europe. But that again is specific for sea freight. Now, once you have those 2 weeks time, you also need to keep in mind that every week where the European market is being supplied new fruits, so 2 weeks time plus 1 week to market the fruits, we're talking about roughly 3 weeks time life expectancy for sea freight. So that's 2 weeks time transit, 1 week being marketed. So you need to see how the fruit will evolve. It's more tricky for air freight, because the harvesting is done on a shorter time, and you harvest just before the plane arrives, and then you're shipping. And because the fruits are harvested at the last moment, their shelf life is shorter than what you would expect when you're harvesting for sea freight. So it all has to do on the transport, like Michel said, the logistic that you're aiming for. If you're aiming for sea freight or for air freight, the logistic time, the harvesting time will not be the same. So just keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that all depends on how good you follow the crop growing protocol. It also increases the shelf life, the quality of the food that you're going to be supplying.
What you're saying, Thierry, is that the air freighted pineapples are transported in a much more mature state.
Yeah. They're harvested at much more mature level. But then again, pineapples are what we call non-climateric fruits. That is, once your pineapple is harvested, it does not mature, it does not evolve. The pineapple is harvested mature, be it sea freight or air freight. It will only evolve towards I'm looking for the English words. It will only grow old. The fruit will grow old. What in French is called sénescence, which is the fruit will grow old, dry, but it will not mature. Once it's harvested, your pineapples are harvested mature. So you really need to know what is the optimum time for you to harvest them when they're being shipped by air or by sea.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, another question. This is from an exporter from pineapple exporter from Togo, and he says we produce very good quality, but I notice now people are not ready to buy a quality in Europe because they prefer the cheap one from Costa Rica. They can not compete on price. So they said that it costs more than the Costa Rica one. So what can they do? They have good quality from Togo, but they have like a price issue compared to Costa Rica.
If Michel allows me, just a quick thing. All the exporters think that their pineapples are the best, and I agree. When you taste them at departure, pineapples are the best. Now, what you need to keep in mind right now is that the market, like Michel mentioned, has its ups and downs. Now, when you're sending, it depends. You're talking about Togo. I assume that you're talking about sugarloaf exports. So you're competing with fruits from Benin. You're competing with fruits from Ghana. And on a market, so you need to be sure that the quality that you're going to be supplying is already matching the quality of fruits from your two main competitors. That's for one. And then when you're talking about comparing, people want to buy cheap Costa Rican fruit. That is not totally true, because right now on the market, on the European market, the most expensive pineapples are the one air freighted from Costa Rica, very expensive. So somebody buying your sugarloaf will compare. If you have an importer buying sugarloaf by air, his clients are looking for air freighted fruits. So your main competitors are also supplying air freighted fruit. They're not supplying sea freighted fruit. So it's really a different market. And you also need to keep in mind that what Costa Rica is sending right now is only extra sweet. So as long as you really manage the quality, you're really you still have a possibility to be competitive, because the demand for sugarloaf is good as long as the quality is consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Thierry, but I think maybe you're aiming for the wrong market, because if you're trying to compete with the mass market of Costa Rican sea freight pineapples, it's a completely different market. So I would suggest to try to find other types of buyers that are not specialized in Costa Rican mass-produced pineapples, and go for the more specialized buyers.
Okay, thank you. And we are over time, but I still want to do one or two questions, probably. So there's a question, how is the air freight cost from West Africa comparable from East Africa to Europe? Who can, Thierry, or do you know any about air freight costs?
Apparently, I don't have the specific figure in mind, but air freight from East Africa will definitely be more expensive than West Africa. It's a question of distance. When you look at fruits coming from Kenya, but that's what Michel mentioned right now. There are some exports coming from Kenya that are sold at very expensive prices. I'm talking about at the importer level. Fruits from Kenya branded under the Del Monte brand are sold roughly about 350, 360, 375 per kilo. I don't know if you imagine, that's really expensive, and it's only extra sweet. But then once again, you're not trying to compete with extra sweet. When you're supplying sugarloaf, you have a specific niche market, so don't try to be on that side. But air freight is much more expensive when you're shipping from East Africa, but it's compensated by the fact that Del Monte is branding a specific. It's branding. It's putting up its brand, and people are most of all buying the consistency of the quality, as well as the brand. I personally haven't had the opportunity to taste extra sweet from Kenya, but I'm told it is very very sweet, very appreciated by consumers who like very much the taste. So I wouldn't be able to give you elements of comparison. but air freight costs are much more expensive from Kenya than from West Africa.
Okay, thank you. So one of the last question.
I hear your mouse clicking, Thomas.
Okay. In Uganda, East Africa, we also cultivate pineapples on a large scale. My aim was to process the dried pineapple slices to the European market. How is the dried fruits section faring? I know this is also part of the processed fruit and vegetables, but do you have any expertise on the dried pineapple market as well, Thierry?
No, I mostly follow the fresh fruit pineapple market. For the dry ones, I would need to look into it. If the person wants to send me his question, I'll try to look into it. But I don't have figures for dried pineapple. I don't have a real estimate of the dried pineapple market right now. I know that demand for pulp, organic pulp, is growing. But for dried fruits, I have no clear idea of the market size.
Okay. Now let's then close with this question about the potential for small pineapples, 1 kilo or even less, single user.
Talking about specific variety here, like Victoria pineapples, or?
It doesn't say.
Depending on the variety, if you're looking at Victoria pineapples, depending on the markets, for instance, I know that in Belgium, small sizes of Victoria are valued more than they are in France. So it all depends on the market you're looking for. And then when you're looking at smooth cayenne or extra sweet, nobody's looking for small size pineapples. The big demand for pineapple sizes is more about fruits of 1.6 kilos, 1.5 kilos. So when you're going below those sizes, nobody's really looking for those fruit.
I think it requires a specialized buyer that can really market the product as a specialty. So it's not something I would do on your own. I would find a partner that is that will be able to market it as a specialty. So it requires a specific type of buyer. So yeah, try to visit the trade fairs and find those typical buyers.
I would confirm what you're saying, Michel, keeping in mind that supermarkets play a big role in the marketing of pineapples because of the volumes, and they're not looking for really small size fruits. So instead of trying to sell the small size fruits, better see what kind of fruit size your importer is looking for. And just to complete that answer, I know that markets like Senegal are very into small size fruits or not so big fruits. Then you can have a good value added when you're shipping from Africa to countries like Senegal. But you also have to do what we call the due diligence. You have to move over there and see who is going to buy, what size are they looking for, because it's all about the marketing process. You need to do your own due diligence to know what is going to be your destined market's expectations. And that's why I was talking about what are the expectations of your importer. You definitely need to agree with him what will be the specifications. If you're not able to grow bigger size fruits, then don't say that you'll be able to do that and then supply smaller size fruits, because you'll make him lose money.
Yeah,
thank you, Thierry.
I think to make a small relation with other small fruit and vegetables, like the market for small or mini vegetables is actually quite good. It has been growing. It's a niche, which is mainly destined for the food service market, like restaurants. So I think there can definitely be a niche for for small pineapples, but it's not something I would recommend just to try to push into the market. It's something that needs to be developed, and you need the right people to do that. It's hard to do that from an origin country. But even in a supermarket, I believe it could work, because even supermarkets, they want to differentiate from each other. So they want to have an offer that another supermarket does not have. You know, for them, it's a way to be unique. But again, you have to make it a successful story yourself. You have to sell it. You have to think together with partners in Europe how this could work. So you have to explain them how it will work. And that requires a lot of market knowledge, experience, to convince people. So it's a challenge, but it's not impossible.
Okay, thank you. So we're over time, like 15 minutes. So we really have to close it now for today. Thierry, thank you very much for being here today as a guest speaker and your presentation.
Thank you.
It's been very welcome. Your practical information on quality. I know it has been appreciated by our audience. And to our audience, very welcome for staying with us and listen to our presentation. The presentation, the recording will be available later. It will be sent to you by email if you are registered, and also the presentation itself will be sent to you. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.